Thank you and good afternoon. Happy New Year. It is a pleasure to be here. Being in the business, I thought I would start this afternoon with a psychologist joke. Guy goes into a psychologist, says, I haven't had a good night's sleep in the last 5 years. And the guy says, why? Well, I have this terrible phobia. I believe someone is hiding underneath my bed, and I'm afraid if I fall asleep, they're going to jump out and kill me. Can you help me with this? Psychologist said, well, yeah, I can, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take at least 2 or 3 sessions a month for at least the next 2 or 3 months. The guy said, well, what's that going to cost? He says, I get $150 a session. Guy said, well, that's a lot of money. Let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. And he never hears from him again. Well, a few months later, the psychologist is out shopping, and he sees the guy, recognizes him, goes up and says, I remember you. You're the guy with that phobia. Did you ever find any help or relief for that problem? Guy said, well, actually, I told my bartender about it, and he solved the problem in 5 minutes. He said, what do you mean? He told me to cut the legs off my bed. Thinking outside the box. To collaborate, to educate, and to celebrate, the theme of your conference. Now, I have a very short period of time today, and I have sat in on these sessions for the last 2 or 3 hours, and I was just, as I was sitting there listening myself as an observer, thinking there are so many different techniques that I have that I could share with you to help you folks implement some of the ideas that you've heard here this afternoon, but my time is short, so I'm going to reduce it down to two simple ideas you can use. You are being asked to go through a transition, to see yourself, or I should say to stop seeing yourself as a solo artist or a solo performer, perhaps just annuities or just long-term care or just life, and to begin to see yourself as one Genworth, as part of a team. And as I was listening to the panels and some of the concepts that were going on as to why you should be doing this and how you should do this and how this would benefit you and how it would benefit the advisors, etc., one thing stood out, one thing I didn't hear, and I was surprised that I didn't hear it, was, number one, it's just the right thing to do. And it almost instantly reminded me of something I had read 20 years ago. I don't think I've thought of this story for over 20 years, but I remember reading Zig Ziglar's book, See You at the Top, back in the early 80s. I don't know how many of you know who Ziglar is, but Ziglar was born in Mississippi, but he's headquartered here in Dallas, in this town. And there was a story in that book about a guy working out in the hot sun. He was a manager of a team of people that laid tracks. He managed like 10 people. And he's out in the hot sun managing these people, and a big, beautiful Pullman car pulls up, fancy car, and a guy opens the door out of the back, and he waves to the manager. And the manager waves back, hey, Joe, hey, how you doing, Henry? It's been a long time. And all the workers out there working in the hot sun say, you know that guy? Well, yeah, he's the president of the company, You know the president of the company. How is it that you out here know the president of the company? He said, well, we both came to work for the company on the same day over 20 years ago. That's how I know him. Well, if you both came to work on the same day, why is it you're out here laboring in the hot sun and he's sitting in that big fancy Pullman car? He said, it's simple. I took a job with the company 20 years ago. He went to work for the company 20 years ago. And it's a fundamental difference. I mean, why should you be collaborating? Because you are part of Team Genworth. You are part of One Genworth. And because you're collaborating with other One Genworth team members ultimately helps the company. And anything that helps the company is ultimately going to help everybody because it's the right thing to do. The question, of course, is how do you make that transition? A lot of talk about doing it. How do you actually do it? We are creatures of habit. Let's face it. There's a statement in my business that's really quite true. Once is an accident, twice is a pattern, 3 times, and you're well on your way to forming a habit. Most people can be conditioned in as little as 3 trials. It does not take long to form a habit. And here, some of you have been habitually thinking of yourselves as very focused solo performers for years. Now you're being asked to change the way you think. That's a mental process. As I said, I have 2 things I can offer you here this afternoon that will help you make that mental transition. The first of those 2 ideas is an idea that you will probably end up saying, I can't believe I never thought of that myself. Very simple concept, very effective. How do you change the way you see yourself? How do you program the subconscious mind? Clearly, it's repetition. You talk to the high achievers in almost any business, and they are taking their goals or their business objectives, and they're rewriting them a minimum of 3 to 5 times a week. I can't tell you how many hundreds of high achievers I've met in my 30-year career that tell me I learned early on in the business to keep a notepad on my desk and rewrite my goals repetitiously. And yet, when you look out into the sales field, you'll find that only about 3 or 4% of the people actually do that. They find it laborious, they find it boring, they never get around to forming that as a habit. So most people know that repetition creates focus. Most people know that they should be writing their goals down 3 or 4 times a week, and yet most people never get around to actually doing it. So in lieu of that, let me offer you an alternate. You're being asked to transition now to the concept of one Genworth, and it's the very first part of a brand new year. And you've got a couple things you could be shooting for: a trip to Paris. You've got millions of dollars of production. You've got an actual production goal. You've got targets. You may have a goal for numbers of centers of influence, new centers of influence you want to generate this year. I'm sure you all have some nice, clear-cut goals for the year 2010. Question: how many of you have those business objectives down on tape or on a CD anywhere? Can I see by a show of hands? I only see one hand out of 300 or 400. One hand. My next question would be, why not? How many hours a week do you spend driving around in your vehicles? If you ever clock it, it would amaze most of you. Most of you are spending dozens of hours a week behind the wheel of a vehicle, transporting yourself from one appointment to the next. And you're learning a lot of information in this conference. You're getting motivated. You're getting focused. Heard that word tossed around all afternoon. You're getting centered. You're going to leave this conference knowing exactly and precisely what you need to do to transition to one Genworth and probably to win that trip or to achieve that trip to Paris. You're going to know what to do it. You're going to be enthused and focused and motivated. Question: how long is that motivation going to last for most of you? About 48 hours, yeah. Most people can only stay focused about 48 hours in the absence of repetition. And the best example of that is New Year's resolutions. Just a couple of weeks ago, millions of people woke up and said a New Year's resolution. What is by far the most common New Year's resolution in America? 10 pounds, right? They get up and they have a very centered goal. I want to lose the weight. And then you ask them why. What is your motivation? And they'll tell you. They'll give you a long list. I'll tell you why I want to lose the weight. I'm going to look better, feel better, wear clothes I haven't worn in years, be healthier, be so proud of myself. They're not lacking in motivation. And yet, you go back a day or two later and that person is sitting at their desk with a cookie or a bag of chips. And your question is, well, what about the diet? And they'll say, not today, man. Did you hear what that advisor just said to me? Not today. They have trouble staying focused. Getting focused is not hard. Staying focused is. Most people can only stay motivated and focused for about 48 hours before they lose it, unless they are repeating it. Now, most of you will not ever get around to writing these goals down repetitiously, so why not take about a half hour and get your goals, your targets, your objectives for 2010, burn it to a CD, or download it onto your iPod. That entire process would take you less than a half hour. And if you don't know how to do it, ask any teenager in America and they'll happily show you how to do it. It's extremely simple to do. Get a microphone, plug it into a computer, follow the prompts, and sit there and read your goals over and over. Burn yourself a 5-minute-long goal tape. Now, I know many of you using Sequoia, you have a business planning tool. Get those goals down on a CD or a tape, download them onto your iPod or whatever, and then just allow them to drone in the background. You spend how many hours a week driving around in your car? Burn it to a CD, and once a day, every day for the next couple of weeks, just pop the CD in and let it drone in the background, just like TV advertising. You know, a lot of people don't think they can be conditioned, and yet television advertisements do it to us on a very regular basis. For example, here's a very old TV commercial, Winston tastes good. Like a cigarette should. That commercial's been off the air for over 30 years. Here's one that's been off the air a lot longer. You'll wonder where the yellow went, and you brush your teeth with Pepsodent. That commercial's been off the air for 43 years. A lot of you are looking at me like, I don't know what this guy's talking about, so let me show you some of the things they programmed you with. Please don't squeeze. Fly the friendly skies of. You're in good hands with Genworth. Better get that one straight. Isn't it fascinating that I could walk up to everyone in this room as a stranger and say, please don't squeeze, and without blinking an eye, you fire right back, Charmin? What kind of response would I get if I walked up to you and said, what are your production goals for 2010? What are your first quarter goals? How do you intend to implement the One Genworth concept? Would you come back that fast with an answer? Would you be that centered and that focused? Advertising works just by droning in the background. You did not try to learn those TV commercials.